strategic execution, how to get from A to B. If you are a manufacturer and you sell through a dealer channel, if you have anyone you consider outside reps, you have a sales network out there, your current state is probably leaving you with some gaps that you may have already recognized. Almost nobody that I talk to in this space feels that their network is perfectly capable or perfectly enabled by what they're doing today. And so everyone envisions a future state. How far away you are from that future state depends upon, where your network is right now, what you're providing in terms of training, how confident and effective your reps are out there in the field. And so the key point to mention here is that in order to make any change as wide and as far-reaching as a distributed sales network of whether it's dealers and distributors or simply just outside reps, there are three kind of transformation pillars that are essential. The first one's kind of a fun one because, Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, whether you read his works or not, actually came up with this famous law of compensation, which is each person is compensated in like manner for that which he or she has contributed. But most people just kind of, distill this down to the more you give, the more you get. And that's true in a lot of ways. It's particularly true with your outside sales network. And so this is where I encourage manufacturers, I frankly plead with them to make the first move, because your outside sales folks, your channels, are only going to be as effective as you make them. They are not going to automatically succeed. You need to equip them with the tools. So that's the first belief that you need to accept, is that the more you give to your sales network, the better they will perform. Transformation pillar number 2 is the trust equation. Ultimately, you have to build a high level of trust with your dealers and distributors in order for them to create high levels of trust with the buyer. And so the level of trust that you have is proportional to how much credibility, how much reliability that is doing what you say, how much integrity and intimacy. So are you honest? Do you have close relationships? And do you really approach those relationships as partnerships? And then inversely related to self-orientation. So, ultimately, the more that you can appear focused on their needs and on what they need to do, the higher the trust will be developed. And then number 3 is very simple. You got to give them an easy button. The more complex, the harder you make things, the less likely any of it is to work. And that may be true with what you're doing today. I see a lot of dealer portals and kind of other solutions, and not to throw shade. I know these things are hard to do. We've developed many things out there, and so it's hard. Making it easy is really important, though, when you're ultimately trying to make people more effective. And so the first way to kind of look at this is that you are going to be, as the manufacturer, providing training, providing content to your dealers and sales reps, right? So this is in the form of sales materials, product information, maybe comparisons, maybe even sales calculators, anything that is going to ultimately help them to be current and informed and ultimately sell. And then they turn around and they provide a customer experience to the end buyer. And so in a way, if you have a distributor-focused sales network, they are your customer, because ultimately they're the one that is going to be dealing with the customer, providing post-sales support during the sales process. And so you really need to understand that it's incumbent upon you to take care of your dealers and distributors in this process. So the 80-20 rule, or the Pareto principle, is relevant here because in most of the conversations I have with manufacturers, what I hear is when I ask, how many of your reps out there, how many of your dealers and distributors are high performing, I usually hear some number around 20%, which means that there's 80% of the network that is not high performing. And that's a very high number, and yet it's very common. And so the question that we need to ask ourselves is, how are we going to move the needle most effectively? And a lot of it has to do with actually moving some of this bottom 80% into the top 20% category. The top 20%, look, they're doing great. You just got to make sure that they're rewarded. But the bottom 80%, there is some portion of them, maybe 5, 10, 15% even, of that number that you can make high performing if you just help them. And so we know that 60 to 70% of content churned out by marketing departments today sits unused. So very, very expensive to have all that content going out there. And the question is, do the people selling to your customers have current and accurate information about your products? Really, because if they don't, they are not going to be high performing. They're not going to be able to answer questions. They're not going to be able to give good information to buyers. And they're not going to come across as confident and professional. And so if you could add 3 of your dealers or distributors to your top performing category, how much of a difference would that make for your business? What if it were 5 or 10? And so back in the day, we worked with Freightliner. We built them a custom mobile. This is really where we got started with mobile sales tools. And we just realized that by providing highly visual, contextual, interactive information that was simple to understand, we know this is the inside of a cab, that last thing was the exterior of the truck, that we would have huge results. And we did. We delivered those to multiple trucking brands. So faster training, break even, sales increases, significant decrease in dealer calls. And so what we learned was that there's really a 5-step framework. If you want to raise the level of your channel reps, your outside reps, there's really a progression here. There's no shortcuts. You can't just jump to number 5. If you're trying to take that 80% of your reps that are not high performing and you want to convert them into high performing, then you got to go step by step. And so, it's really the 5 C's. The first thing you have to do is make them current. Then you got to make them consistent. Then they become confident. Then they become consultative. And then finally, we can accept that they are capable. So this is the model. This is the way to approach it. And so, phase number 1, so right now, maybe they're using outdated materials. Maybe they're just not knowledgeable on the line. This is where to start. If they don't have good information on your products, how are they supposed to be selling them? And so ultimately, we need to make sure that the reps can search and access product information at all times, that they have real-time delivery of content updates, and that ultimately the manufacturer has analytics in order to track what is going on and what assets are being used, back to that 60% example. There are some ways that you can measure this. Ultimately, the goal is self-sufficient reps who are up to date. In phase 2, ultimately, you try to fix some of the inconsistency that is happening throughout your sales network. And part of this is, maybe right now, reps don't exactly know what to say in certain situations. Sales training is hard to implement and score. So what do? You can introduce playbooks, scripts to overcome objections, and there's some sales coaching that can happen here. Ultimately, the key measures are going to be acquired through sales process testing and coaching, and ultimately you'll have consistent reps. And because they're more consistent, it'll provide a better brand representation to the market and to your customers. Number 3 has to do with confidence, and this one's absolutely huge. Most dealers and distributors are on their heels because they're not confident. And so, why is that? Well, they're not comfortable representing the product because they don't have good information, which leads to turnover, and there's low engagement and participation from newer reps. We're looking for higher engagement, higher confidence, top of mind product awareness. There's various ways to do this. We see that it's successful through better close rates and positive customer feedback, and you also have a huge gain in buyer perception of your sales reps, as well as brand awareness. Then we get to number 4. This is the consultative step. One of the biggest pieces of feedback I hear is our dealers and our distributors are not proactive. They are reactive. They are order takers. People walk in, customer, buyer knows more than they do about things, and they are on their heels and they don't know what to do. So they just take the order. They don't know what questions to ask and all that kind of stuff. So when you get them consultative, this takes some work, but you can stack the sales skills. You can get them through testing and reinforcement. Ultimately, you can prepare them with the right questions to ask based on scenario. You can teach them your sales process so that they understand what to do at each stage. Higher levels of perceived expertise and more of a consultative mindset translates into bigger sales growth numbers. And then finally, capability. This is a mind shift from the idea that, look, some reps are just good or bad. You can't out-train a rotten core. Why do we waste resources on this? There is proof that we have from the market and from implementing this model that you can take some percentage of your lower performing reps and you can get them to the high performing category. A lot of this has to do with your technology capability. Can you give them information on demand? Can you grow their confidence and their awareness through remote capability? And at the end of the day, you're going to see higher levels of sales synthesis and high performance and a higher percentage in that high producer category. And so I shared this a couple of weeks or months ago. Former senior manager on our team had this great rule of the set of rules or axioms to live by and to manage by. And one of my favorite things that he said was, if you want people to do the right thing, you have to make it easy for them to do the right thing. And this applies in so many situations. It applies not only with employees, with salespeople. I mean, give me an example where this isn't true. And so going back to the marketing and dealer alignment, the way to achieve alignment is by having the delivery of information to your dealers and distributors, outside sales, who then use the sales content, and then you get analytics and feedback so that you can, yellow and blue makes green. You can create a virtuous circle of feedback, and then you can take the information from your network and turn it into continuous improvement. And so again, easy button. We've been working on this for years, and it's really why we kind of came up with our particular platform. And again, you can build this stuff on your own. You can go, I was just talking to a customer earlier today, prospect, who built out an entire internal team to basically manage their app and work. This was on the agricultural side, and that's great. My perspective is very simply that whether you do it in-house or you come outside to someone like us and with the BAM platform, you need to have certain boxes checked, and then you know that you are doing a virtuous closed loop cycle of continuous improvement, and you are always going to be seeing a rising level of improvement with your reps. If you're curious about how we have implemented this, and if you would like to take a deeper look at some of this and see how some of our users just find our system to be easy, head over to bamsales.io and go ahead and reach out to us there. Thanks.